Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the CUS AACRL Fall Workshop on subject partnership with other faculty members and between faculty members and academic librarians and faculty members in specific subjects. We're really excited that you're all a part of today's workshop. I just wanted to kind of say a little bit about ALLA CUS and Alabama AACRL. First of all, Alabama AACRL is a separate division from anything related to ALLA. And I'm only saying that because we would like to encourage all of you, if you are not a part of it, to join our organization. If you go to our website, and I'll post that on the chat in the room, and if you download our form, you'll be able to send in your registration form and stuff like that. And we are working on getting electronic registration available so that you can electronically apply and renew your dues with Alabama AACRL. The membership fee is only $10, so that's really great. And we do a lot of things like this throughout the year, so please just remember the AACRL. CUS is a division of ALA, and we work with all the colleges, universities, and special libraries to partner with in workshops and develop professional development and encouraging participation, and even reaching out with Legislation Day and meeting with policymakers in Montgomery. So thank you all for attending today. Please consider joining both of these organizations. We would be very happy to have you. And I want to thank all the speakers that we have today, and thank you to Sara Whitver for setting this up. I really do appreciate it. With that,
all right. So I am in the process of just really quickly putting links to the two organizations here so that anybody who wants to see who we are and what we're all about can follow those links and get more information. So good morning. My name is Maurice Whitver, and it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers today. Before I make those introductions, I just wanted to share with you how we're going to structure today's talk. So during the presentation, each speaker will have 10 minutes to address the questions that we've given them. After each panelist has had a chance to speak, we're going to allow the panelists to ask each other questions and to go into more in-depth comparisons of their work. We've organized them so that panelists with similar positions or things that might be of interest to compare are speaking back-to-back. We've built in about 3 to 5 minutes between each speaker for that kind of conversation to happen. After all of the panelists have spoken, there will be some time for responses and questions between the panelists, and then we're going to open up the floor to audience questions and feedback and comments. We have a nice variety of liaison roles represented here today, so we hope that this format will benefit everyone, and we're interested to see how the roles compare from library to library and from discipline to discipline. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panelists. Today, we have Beth Rugan Shepard. She's the instruction coordinator and the Arts and Humanities librarian at the University of South Alabama. We have Michael A. Arthur, who is the head of resource acquisition and discovery at the University of Alabama. We have Tim Dodge, who's the history and political science librarian at Auburn University. We have Eric A. Kidwell, who is the director of the library and professor, and he's also the Title IX coordinator for Huntingdon College. We have Cynthia Miller, who is the music, performing, and fine arts librarian at the University of Alabama, and Candace Van Horn, who is the business and economics librarian at Auburn University. So without any further ado, Beth, I am going to, I have not advanced my slides. I apologize for that, everybody. So that's all of our panelists right there. And so, Beth, yeah, take it away. Go ahead. I think I wasn't able to figure out how to give you control of the slides, so go ahead and let me know when you want me to advance your slides.
Oh, it's going to be like, next slide, please.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. Oh, look. Did it say that you could? What is happening?
I don't think. You know, I think maybe me talking it will make sense, like when to advance the slide.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, so Beth, Rugan, Shepard.
Yeah. Okay, and I'm not sure what happened to my little nerd glasses, but they're over my title. So my name is Beth Rugan Shepard, and I'm the Arts and Humanities Librarian and the Instruction Coordinator Librarian at the University of South Alabama. And this is my first web presentation, so it's a little different for me since I can't gauge audience reaction. So we'll just see how this goes. So I guess next slide, please. Okay, so before talking about, I guess, my role in particular, I really do need to spend a second talking about a little bit of background for our liaison program here at South. And I mean just really a bit. I feel like we've been living and breathing this transition to what we have now for the last 6 months, so trying to condense it pretty quickly has been an interesting experience for me, but really just a bit seriously. So in early summer of this past summer, so June of 2015, we submitted a proposal for a reorganization of our entire liaison program here at South. And before our reorganization, our model, excuse me, in our library was really for our liaisons was a bibliographic and reference model, which I think a lot of people, kind of a legacy model. Our librarians were really doing a lot of buying books and spending a whole lot of time staffing a reference desk. But we had two big things kind of precipitate the change about, I guess, late spring, early summer. And we got a new president. So, and with the new president comes a new strategic plan. And his goal is to move our kind of legacy comprehensive institution into a research institution. Ultimately, his goal is a Research 1. And those of you who are at Research 1s know they're very different from comprehensive institutions. So that was one thing. We had a completely new strategic plan. And then also about the same time, and this is kind of my interest, so I'm going to have to talk about it a little bit. About the same time, we were, my colleagues were attempting to develop and shape our instruction program. We are in the process of transitioning from kind of an ad hoc instruction to a strategic instruction program. Ad hoc worked really well for us for a long time. We developed relationships with faculty that way. And by ad hoc, I mean like they request a class, we do it regardless of if that's the third history seminar we've taught that semester to the same 27 students over and over again. We would do it just to establish those relationships. But we really wanted to move into something a little bit more strategic. And with that strategic goal, we wanted to broaden the representation of the disciplines in instruction. You guys probably know from experience that there are library-friendly, I'll call them that, library-friendly disciplines that they're probably the humanities, which is great for me, but they realize the importance of research in their classes, and they're very, very open to library intervention. But there are ones that aren't, and they can be harder to get into. And we wanted to make sure that we saw some of those underrepresented disciplines in the instruction program. Part of that is we wanted to develop really clear information literacy learning objectives at both our foundational and discipline-specific levels in courses so that we could make sure that students were getting the same thing in our foundation courses and then moving into more specific and advanced information literacy skills at their discipline level. And then last but not least, we really needed to create a culture of assessment in our library and our institution as a whole. So that's what started the change. So now we have a completely different model, and next slide. Yes, okay, so we have really kind of newly defined responsibilities, and we call these the big three. And they are instruction, collection development, and outreach. Collection development was sort of really happening anyway. We were really doing a great job buying books, but part of collection development, we really needed to reevaluate our collection development policies. And of course, we can't do that without doing the teaching and outreach for the departments, because at that point you're just doing collection development in a vacuum, and that doesn't really work. So now all the liaisons are responsible for collection development, so buying, but also creating policies and long-term policies too. I mean, we're really kind of interested in building programs. What does that mean? What does that mean for the collection? And also collection maintenance. We really need to do some collection maintenance for our collection, so that's a top priority for us. But within instruction, we decided that all the liaisons that wanted to participate in the program would teach both our foundational, which in our case is English 102, which is our second comp class, where we see every student, and our freshman seminar. So every librarian would do that, but they would also teach the discipline-specific information literacy courses within their disciplines, their assigned disciplines. And with that would come, of course, the designing lessons, information literacy, learning objectives for certain courses, and artifacts, and then assessment instruments for that. And then lastly is the outreach part of the equation. And I think this was the part that was really kind of missing before, and that really informs both instruction and collection development. So we put a big emphasis on making sure that we are maintaining regular communications with our departments and faculty, but also keeping updated curriculum maps of the classes, tracking student activity through the major. I mean, we all know that there's things on the books, courses on the books that aren't necessarily there in reality. We figured that out from doing some curriculum mapping. And then, of course, staying familiar with the scholarly communication within our disciplines. Another thing we did that really needed to be done for all of this to work logically was align like disciplines under the most logical librarian. And this will make sense in a second when I talk about my previous liaison responsibilities and mine now. They were kind of fractured and splintered. Different people had different things, just kind of legacy holdovers, people moving things around. So we aligned all the social sciences under one librarian, all the earth sciences under one, the rest of the STEMs under another. So just kind of made sense that way. Okay, next slide. That feels so strange to say that. Okay, a little bit about our organization of the liaison program is at South we have two types of liaisons. We have discipline-specific ones and population liaisons. Discipline liaisons are the traditional kind of liaison where you are the liaison to a department or college, to the College of Education or the Department of English. And population liaisons are a little bit different. We have, because we are a comprehensive institution, have some unique populations that don't really get represented at the discipline level. So we're kind of thinking like transfer students, international students. And so we had a couple librarians that had experience working with international students or transfer students or honors students, and so they are our population liaisons. So they're not assigned a particular discipline, but they're working with a particular population group. The oversight of our liaison program is a little bit complicated. I'm being completely honest here. The liaisons are more of a task force, and we come from several different departments, which can make reporting or evaluating liaisons a little complicated. The majority of the discipline liaisons are in the reference and instruction department. But there are some of our population liaisons that are in different departments in acquisitions and cataloging and government documents. So reporting structures can be a little complicated. But for the most part, liaisons report to the head of reference and instruction and the head of collection development. And those reporting lines really depend on their responsibility. So of course, collection development issues are going to go to our head of collection development, and instruction and outreach stuff is going to go to the head of reference and instruction. Okay, next slide. Okay, a little bit about me. So I've talked about the whole, our system, our liaison program here at South. I am the Arts and Humanities Librarian, so that means I'm responsible for, get ready, music, visual arts, English, theater and dance, foreign language and literature, philosophy and religion, which are departments in themselves. And then we have some interdisciplinary minor programs, African American Studies and International Studies. So that kind of makes sense now. Before our reorganization, I was the liaison for, if we can call it that, bibliographer liaison, not sure, for English, theater and dance, international studies, and the weird outlier, gerontology. It made outreach, teaching really kind of complicated. Now all kind of the humanities and arts are under one person, which makes sense from a collection standpoint, but also from an instruction standpoint. And we also really try to do, make sure that librarians with either educational backgrounds in those areas or years of experience in those areas got the departments that were most logical for them. Okay, next slide. Okay, so a little bit about the challenges of being a liaison right now. We're really working on a change in culture, and two major places, within the university and within the library as a whole. So within the university, as we are making a, I guess, concerted effort to persuade some of the teaching faculty of our value, and that of our value, but also of what we can do for them, I guess, too, from an instruction standpoint. Like I said, this kind of goes back to making sure that we're representing a lot of the other disciplines that in the past we really haven't. And that goes for some of my disciplines as well, like philosophy and religion. I can't tell you the last time we had an instruction class for them. So persuading teaching faculty that give us a day, give us some time on your class, we can really help you out. And then within the library as a whole, the shift from a reference and bibliographer model to a liaison and instruction model it's growing pains. So we have some different ideas about perceptions of librarianship, kind of what that means. Primarily, we were staffing a reference desk, and as you guys know, and as we know from our own statistics, reference questions at the desk are down. And what we were seeing is more students needed actual consultation with a subject specialist. And so we had to kind of rethink our staffing. What does that mean if librarians are no longer staffing the desk? Instead, they're teaching classes, or they're out of the library, which is a big thing and kind of a big change. Instead of being at a desk, we were in the departments or in the classroom. And then as the coordinator of instruction, this is something that I'm acutely aware of, is that there are different comfort levels with instruction for different librarians. I have a teaching background, so I am completely comfortable with it, but there's some people who this is a completely new thing for them. And so we've really done, hopefully, a good job creating internal professional development opportunities for our librarians. And I'm probably over my time, and I've got one last slide.
That's all right.
Okay, so the good stuff, and this is pretty quick. Stuff I love about being a liaison is I get to participate in disciplines that I really, truly love. So as a graduate work in English, sometimes I get to go back and relive a little bit of that and talk about things that I'm really interested in, and I get to participate in stuff that interests me outside of librarianship. Also, it creates kind of the new outreach and instruction really creates an ownership kind of the disciplines for the librarians. You become that librarian. It gives you, I think, an ownership of the instruction, the students, the faculty. They're your students, they're your faculty. Again, you create lasting relationships with faculty and students. And this is a little bit self-serving on my part, too. I'm going up for tenure in a year and a half, and I really want those teaching faculty recommendations and stuff like that. So it's a little self-serving, but it's also really awesome. Of course, when you're teaching and doing the outreach, you improve your familiarity with the collection. And then, of course, what I love is spending less time in the library and more time doing outreach, more time going to recitals, plays, presentations, shows, faculty meetings, getting out of my office a little bit. And then, of course, the thing that I'm really excited about is creating a unified defined instruction program. And then the thing that really matters ultimately is we're providing the library and university administration with assessment information, which we all know that's how we actually get anything in today's university, is to provide assessment showing that it's needed and that it maps to student learning. So that's a little bit about me and us, and yeah, okay, that's
okay. Thanks, Beth. Michael, did you get your microphone working?
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Great.
All right, so we're going to move on to Michael Arthur from the University of Alabama.
Okay, you can...
Yeah, you can tell me when you want the slide to be advanced. Sorry about that. It's a little awkward.
There you go. Okay, so we can go to the next one.
The next one? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I really am happy to be following Beth, because the model that she has been working on at her institution is somewhat, I found out yesterday, loosely based on the model we had where I was previously at the University of Central Florida, and her current president was our provost at the time. So I started really being overhead of collection development in 2006 at UCF, where I inherited a collection development librarian model that basically meant that a librarian was assigned to each academic department, And within that department, a faculty member was also assigned to collaborate with the librarian. And they were often assigned by the committee, by the department chair, or it was the department chair. Library funds there were assigned to librarians for monograph and other one-time expenditures. And then my job was to coordinate with all of them and manage the library materials budget, mostly focusing on the databases and all the recurring expenditures that we had, but also to work closely with the collection development librarians, assign the subject areas, and fill vacancies and things like that. I also reviewed their work and contributed to their annual evaluations. Next slide. But the model that I mentioned earlier that Beth's institution sort of looked at was the change that we made in 2013 when I began to collaborate with Barbara Tierney, who was now, at that time was brand new as head of reference. We decided to take a look at our current model, and it remained roughly the same in that librarians were assigned the subject areas and faculty were still appointed to collaborate with the librarian, but what it did was focus more attention and time, because she was able to make changes to individual librarian job descriptions to provide more time to make it truly a outreach librarian role. The collection development librarians were asked to become more involved with outreach, to integrate librarians into the academic mission, and working with scholarly communication initiatives and other areas to get them actively involved in the research life cycle. From my standpoint, I had to do a lot of moving around, because over time with open positions, what had happened is that subject areas were all over the place, and you would have a librarian with the humanities, an area in the sciences, because they had just volunteered to take on areas. So what we did was ask everybody to be flexible, and we moved subject areas into logical groupings, and then had librarians assigned. So there was a science librarian, a health sciences librarian, that kind of thing. I continued to do that kind of work and continued to manage the materials budget, which was one of the main things I liked to do from the collection development side. Next slide. So now here at the University of Alabama, I've only been here 3 months. Officially, I manage resource acquisition and discovery, which is technical services. And I'm currently working with my boss to transition the management of the subject liaison program here. I'm slowly assuming more management of the materials budget. I've developed an entirely new fund structure to help us manage our funds, and I'm working closely with YBP to expand our approval plan and implement patron-driven acquisitions. Next slide. So some of the things that I was thinking about in response to Sarah's questions, while I'm still learning here how to assist the collection development librarians, my role within collection development was a lot more official at UCF, in that my job was to manage the collection development liaison program and to provide them with goals to evaluate their work. Here it's been a little bit different so far. I'm more trying to work with the colleagues. I don't officially evaluate them or provide them goals, but I do try to work as I can to help them understand the ways we're doing ordering and through YBP, or to keep people updated on some of the packages that we're considering, things like that. I do not manage any specific subject areas. I haven't really done that since I was at Old Dominion University. At UCF, I didn't manage any subject areas. I feel like it's kind of a conflict for me to do that, because I have had control over the budget. But I do try to focus on collection development at the macro level and look at our initiatives. Are we broadly collecting in the areas where we should? Are we working collaboratively with colleagues around the state or around the region to collect, to get kind of discounts that we want? Are we looking at all the new initiatives out there, like patron-driven acquisitions? Are we looking at streaming video? Are we actively involved with faculty trying to determine if what we're purchasing is really meeting their needs in the classroom? And then so far I've been holding monthly meetings with the collection development librarians. Next slide. I think one of the questions was, looking for what's been exciting to me. So right now, we're awaiting the arrival of our new dean, who will start after the first of the year. That'll be helpful in helping us with setting a new agenda, so to speak, and we're exploring the new areas, as I mentioned before, which include PDA and development of subject-level collection development policies. I'm still working to bring together 3 departments, acquisitions and serials, cataloging, and electronic resources. So we're trying to bring that all together into one big happy family. And then considering our goals and objectives, both in this department and library-wide, what should we be doing collection development related in a 21st century research library? So next. So what's going well or not? Well, like I said, it's been exciting to work with the selectors, library administration here. Everyone's been very helpful, and I'm already reaching out to faculty on campus, especially through the new faculty orientation. I've continued what I did at UCF, and that is a lot of collaboration with publishers and vendors, bringing them in or for presentations here, or meeting with them at conferences to talk about ways that they can help us improve our ROI, make more content available. The good funding here, for the most part, has helps this library support the university mission, and that's been going well, because where I was before, we were always worried about funding. The biggest challenges really don't change from one place to another. It's managing the expectations from above me and below me, and then space issues are a concern here, just as they were before. And then one of the things that I often think about is as we change the way we purchase content, the way users access it and make use of it, it's this constant thought about, are we doing collection development or providing a service? Is there a difference? And if so, how does that impact funding and long-term growth and access to the collection? So with that, I'll try to cut it off here so we can stop right at the 10:30 mark, but I did have a couple of articles there that people could look at if they're interested on learning more about, especially the building of the new, or the revamping of the collection model in 2013 at UCF. That's it.
All right. So what I wanted to do right now is spend about 10 minutes to see if Beth and Michael wanted to, we don't have to do 10 minutes, we can do 3 to 5 minutes. Just give you a few moments to see if you had anything that you wanted to talk about in comparison, and open up in a conversation between the 2 models before we move on to specific subject areas.
Yeah, I mean, I have a question. So I think I mentioned in my presentation that part of our evolving collection development.
I lost Beth.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay. So I think I mentioned, like I said, in our collection development evolving responsibilities, that we're interested in exploring subject-level CD policies, and I was just going to ask, as somebody who's at that above level than the liaisons, like, what's the impetus for that, and then how do you see working with the liaisons to do that?
Oh, Beth, you want me to speak to that?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. I'm really excited to hear that you are also going to be doing that. One of the things that we talked about a lot at UCF was that we had an overall collection development policy that was used for things like driving our major purchasing decisions, determining at what level the approval plan would be implemented. It was a really large approval plan at UCF that the profiling of that drove not only automatic shipment of print, but it drove notifications to the subject librarians. It drove our patron-driven acquisitions profile and cataloging loads, so that was an important part. The overall collection development policy talked a lot about what we would collect, what we would not, in formats and things, but we really didn't have that subject level. Well, we didn't consistently have subject-level collection development policies that talked about, within the framework of the larger policy, what specific things were being done at the subject level. And so as the subject liaison model there grew and faculty librarians got more involved with the teaching side of things and getting more involved in scholarly communication and the research life cycle, they started doing things like you're talking about with curriculum alignment and learning more about the degree levels that within each program, how large are the programs, how highly ranked are they? And so we were dealing with a lot of budget constraints. So if we funded everybody equally, that we were concerned that meant mediocre collections across the board. So we asked the librarians to look and say, okay, if we can't fund everybody at a high level, should we be funding some areas at a high level? Those are the kind of things then that went in the individual subject liaisons collection development policies. And it's really a way to be able to, when you can't provide something, those CD policies often come back and protect you, because you can say to the person requesting an item, look, it's not in it doesn't meet our collection development policy. But also it just helps during budgeting, allocation, and overall being able to manage so that you know that within all the different kinds of formats that you could be buying that would support a subject, you're keeping it within the guidelines that you've set out initially. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly kind of where we are right now. And then also, I was wondering if you considered and how you considered, because we're rapidly growing our institution, and they're creating new programs, new minors, new majors, seems like every other day. And so I think we really want to get ahead of the curve instead of trying to play catch up once we find out there is a major, right? To create the subject CD policies that anticipate the need, I think.
Okay.
Did you guys do any of that, or?
Yeah, we were kind of lucky at UCF that at the highest level of review for a new program on campus, that review and submission required that the department get a library report signed by the library dean.
I think that's the best case scenario, right?
So what we would do as part of that, again, back to those individual collection development policies, they would spell out in there within they were done by department, not by degree. So let's say biology, the subject librarian would do a policy that talked about all of the different areas within biology that were supported. Well, if a new program came along and no money was provided to the library for it, it could specify in that individual policy that material being collected would not include support for X program because no money was given. As you start to grow, goes back to that earlier statement I made about we can't fund everybody mediocre. So part of that policy development can help in letting the larger university community know that stuff is not being purchased for this particular niche program within a department, and this is why. But I think you're correct in thinking about if you're going to have a lot of new program growth, if the money doesn't change, then these policies will help you decide how you're going to allocate the money that you do have.
Oh, cool, thanks.
So I have a question for you.
All right.
We've talked today about bibliographers, subject librarians, CD librarians. Everyone's always, even here, I'm not exactly sure what we call our subject librarians. How did you, have you decided on what they will be called? And if so, what factors did you use to determine if they're called one or the other?
Yeah, and we actually put a lot of thought into it, what we were going to call them. And I guess I've been at South 4 years. So when I first got here, the librarians responsible to departments were bibliographers. And to us, that kind of meant buying, and also from the instruction, and I'm putting scare quotes around it, instruction standpoint, that meant creating lists of titles for students or faculty. And we kind of wanted to shift out of that model and instead more of, I guess, interacting rather than a passive role, a more active role. And we really did a whole lot of literature. We looked at the literature and kept seeing over and over that liaison worked really well. We're liaising. So we really liked the verb, and so we are now calling everybody liaison. So either you're a discipline liaison or a patron liaison. So we've officially made the switch. Yeah.
So in their specific role of, when they're working with collection development, are they still called collection development liaisons, or then does it change to identify them specifically as building collections?
We really, I guess from a title standpoint, we changed it to liaison, and the big three, like so collection development, instruction, and outreach. So you're the liaison for humanities and arts, and so I'm also the collection development librarian for those things. But we're trying to stop using collection bibliographer, I guess, and moving more into getting the idea out of not just buying. Does that answer your question? I don't know if I'm answering the question.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I'm so happy that you guys had so much to talk about, and I think we're going to go ahead and move on to the individual subject liaisons, starting with Tim Dodge. And I want to remind everyone to hold their questions to the end. We have 4 more panelists who are going to speak, and then we are going to open the floor for audience questions. So we will move to Tim, and then after Tim speaks, we'll let the other 2 have a chance to ask Tim questions, or for Tim to ask them questions, and then we'll move on in that manner until we get finished, and then we'll open it up to everybody else. All right, so are you there, Tim?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Okay, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Okay, sorry folks, I'm I guess the only one without PowerPoint slides, but I think I can still convey what I'd like to convey. As a subject specialist / liaison, in this case it's for history and political science at Auburn University, I've identified 9 things that I find that are unique or peculiar to this role, for me anyway. Excuse me. And let me mention how this got started also, is that, long story short, in between 1998 and 2002, we had a library director here who was, I guess you could say, was dynamic, and she changed an awful lot of things here. And one of them was to, compress 4 reference departments into one standard department. And so I was moved from what had been a separate government documents reference department. I was moved to the main reference department. Then I had to be assigned a discipline. Luckily, for book purchases primarily. Luckily, history was chosen. I say luckily because I have a natural interest in it, and I also have a PhD in history. So I was pleased to take history on. And then 8 years later, I was given political science. That was upon the retirement of one of my colleagues. So that's kind of how I got to where I am, even though I started out a little bit differently at Auburn. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, let me see that, but with the dynamic director here, she also said it wasn't mandatory, but she strongly urged we need to have liaisons. We need to have people who are more actively, links to the academic departments, not just, purchasing books, although that's still very important, but, all sorts of other things. And so, I'm going to reflect on some of the things that I have done or that have come my way, shall I say, too. All right. Obviously, ordering books and other library materials is already a given. We know that. But then I've been maintaining a library liaison hour starting 2008. I was not one of the more adventurous people in 2000, so I didn't go out to the history department until quite recently. But I inherited in 2008. I inherited a library liaison hour in the political science department, and it worked quite well. And so one of the things that resulted from that was 3 years later, I made a proposal to the history department saying, hey, look, I've been with you guys even longer, and this has worked well with political science. Let's try it in history. And luckily they were enthusiastic, and that's worked out well too. So typically, the liaison hour is me being in the department with a computer or laptop available, because so much, as we know, is done through the computer nowadays. And it's open door. I try to be in a prominent area, and I've been a little disappointed in one regard, is that students don't seem to take much advantage of this. It's primarily faculty, which is fine in many ways because it does make me more visible, but often it's, oh, Tim, could you order this book? But I do think that that can be of value because, it shows engagement and interest. Also, though, among other things that I found are positive results of the liaison hour, just being a liaison in general, is that I do get tapped to say, when they have job candidates for faculty positions to give either library tours, or if they don't want to come physically to the library, at least I can give a library orientation, whatever you want to call it, presentation, specific, of course, to the discipline, about half an hour. I just did 2 this week for political science and do another one on Monday for political science. But okay, I think we're doing okay in time, so I'd like to mention a few other things that are involved here. This was kind of an idea that I came up with. You might see this as a slightly cynical viewpoint, but in 2010, our department chair, is having us come up with, annual evaluation goals and objectives and stuff. So I was casting about in desperation. What can I have as a goal? I thought, hey, how about this? Needs assessment survey, library needs assessment survey that I could run with the teaching faculty in history and in political science. This is, of course, totally voluntary. And so I did that successfully in 2010, and this year I'm doing it again. And it's coming to an end now that we're in December. So the value of that, though, aside from, again, human contact and face-to-face interaction, is that I do write up a report based on what I found to the needs assessment survey, and then I come up with ideas for, that of course I get the okay from my supervisor with for things that I can improve my liaisonship and my liaison services. So that's one thing that I've sort of enjoyed, actually. It is voluntary, so that means there are some faculty members who just don't respond for whatever reason. It's not personal, because as far as I know, none of them dislike me, but some are just more responsive than others. And then certainly other things that liaisonship, liaison work involves is I occasionally have to present bad news, bad financial news, that budget cuts, or more than, even if it's not a budget cut, cereals price increases of astronomical nature now and then, and I know my colleagues vary how they approach this with their own faculty. Maybe I don't know if Cayce might have an observation about this or not, but I at least believe, and sometimes it's been a little bit to my cost, but I believe in being totally honest and upfront. And so I lay it out to them. I say, okay, this journal has literally increased 500%. We've got to come up with an additional $400 or $1,000, whatever it is, and unfortunately we have no increases in the cereals budget. And we have to figure out what should we cancel it, or are there other journals that we can maybe cancel the existing print subscription for, because we still have a lingering few, not many, lingering few that are coming in both in print and in electronic format. So that's one of my, I'd say, more challenging things, and I say to my cost, as I said, I get along well on a personal basis with all the faculty, but I do remember about 3 or 4 years ago, the history department got quite emotional and upset about things of this nature, and I actually had to call in the library dean to accompany me to a faculty department meeting in history, and she was kind enough to have all sorts of statistics and everything, and that calmed the roiling waters. more recently, for instance, also in political science, one of the professors, department chair actually, was interested, for instance, in a database. And I said, hey, good idea, but we can't afford it. He said, oh, I think you can. Well, I got a price quote, $102,000 a year. And his reaction was, holy smokes. Yeah. So I think that there's some education that we are providing. Again, I know my approach may be a little different from others. And I, in effect, I don't know if I'm asking for trouble, but I do not, I don't believe in sugarcoating. I believe in being tactful, yes, but not sugarcoating. Finally, I know time is almost up, so let me just mention a couple of quick things here. I do attend, typically it's just once a semester, but sometimes it's more often departmental meetings where I provide library updates and of course encourage people to tap me for library instructions and all. I also provide a little newsletter and then, which is actually right now only annual, but I'm probably going to increase its frequency. And finally, the last thing is, you might say this sounds a little ephemeral or casual, but I find it's surprisingly helpful. Is the social aspects. I do get invited to departmental parties, retirements, and maybe things of that nature. Also some of the special seminar presentations and things. And I do try to attend whenever possible. For me, one of the most enjoyable ones is this constitutional law class in political science. I try to attend whenever possible the moot court presentations that are done at the end of the semester with a live version, shall we say, of a current U.S. Supreme Court case that's currently on the docket. So I could probably go on and on and on, but those for me are some of the highlights largely, and a few of the challenges of being the subject specialist / liaison in history and in political science at Auburn University.
Okay, so now if Beth or Michael have any questions for Tim or anybody else on the panel, otherwise I think we're going to go ahead and move to Eric. All right. So next we have Eric Kidwell. He's the director of the Librarian Professor, Title X Coordinator at Huntingdon College. Are you there, Eric?
Uh-oh.
I see him in the participants here. Oh. Eric, are you having audio issues? Okay. Okay, well, we're waiting for Eric. I will go ahead and let us take this question from Imelda. Tim, Imelda wanted to know what questions you're asking on your survey.
Oh, okay, sure. It's a list of it's 12 questions that I derived or came up with back in 2010. But since then, I've modified, incorporating the stuff called the Ithaca study about new ways of doing research and new tools that are used. I didn't want to add on an additional 3 questions, make it 15 questions, because I respect the faculty members' lack of time, and I'm grateful for their time. So, but what I ask is things of both that are more broadly the library in general, and then also that are relating to me and the department in particular, such as, let's see, are they particularly satisfied or dissatisfied with any services? And I say that they can be frank. I'll be confidential, but no names are really needed. Luckily, there's almost really nobody who's been bad. and then I also ask things like, let's see, how relevant is the library to their research? Because I recognize that sometimes, especially some of the younger faculty members who are now in their 20s, they may not necessarily have at all had the library experience that I had. I'm 58, so I'm not ancient, but I am from the more traditional days. And then I also ask things such as, let me see, I don't have it in front of me, but I'm doing this from memory, and I'm not going to go through every single question, but yeah, I ask also, I say, if money were no object, and I know this is being hypothetical, but I do like to get, shall I say, a vision or dream, whatever you want to call it. I say, if money were no object, what are some of the major improvements that you would see, you would like to see within the next 5 years? And finally, the Ithaca questions, derived questions are things such as, how has it changed from 5 years ago from where you shared your research and how you shared your research to today? And actually, I was very thrilled that a couple of brand new historians, I mean literally brand new, just a few months ago, they got in the job. They were kind enough to participate, but they said, well, I'm at the beginning of my career right now, so I said, that's okay, yeah, we can leave that blank. So that's a snapshot of the questions.
Okay, that's so interesting. So Eric, you got your audio fixed?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First, apologies for my voice. I lost my voice earlier this week, so we'll see how this goes. If you'll see by the slide that the experience I'm going to talk about really is outside the traditional library liaison experience. We certainly do that here at Huntingdon. However, what we have found is having official assignments between the library faculty and the various academic departments on campus has never really worked for us. I think it's because we're so small that classroom faculty just kind of naturally gravitate to the librarian they feel most comfortable coming to with their questions and issues. So our departmental liaison network, if you want to call it that, has always been really informal. So what I want to talk about is what I've done over the years that may not appear to directly relate to the library, but politically it's had some decided benefits for us. So first, back in the late 90s, we started a new first-year program called the Liberal Arts Symposium. It ran for, actually it ran close to 10 years. The program was designed, it was thematically based. The freshman level courses were team taught, and all library faculty during the run of the course participated as instructors in the program. And the benefit to this was the teaching teams were interdisciplinary. So I myself, for instance, found myself teaching with mathematics faculty, English faculty, theater faculty. And what that did is it helped to build relationships between the library faculty and the classroom faculty. And it helped educate the classroom faculty as to what it was we really did. I think it elevated our status on campus. We were seen really as colleagues on the faculty as opposed to those people in the library whom we really don't understand what it is they do and are they really faculty. I became the director of that program in 1998 and served as the director through the remainder of the existence of the program. And on the slide it gives an idea of what that entailed, but it was working with faculty to create custom text for the course and a common syllabi. I became the one who made the team teaching assignments and arranged guest speakers, arts events, and a lot of off-campus field trips. Then when that program ended, we instituted another first-year program, and I served for a year as the director of that before that program transitioned yet again. But during my tenure, my main focus was transitioning the program from a 1-hour orientation course to a 3-hour academic course. It started out as mainly a, introduction to college, learning study skills, navigating your way around campus through the various offices. And it just was not as successful as we wanted. We felt it needed to have more academic heft to it. And students just weren't taking a 1-hour course seriously. So we elevated it to a 3-hour academic course, and that achieved more of the goals we were after. Then there was about a 3-year period that I served as the director of the core curriculum of the college, and that primarily was focused on figuring out a way to assess our core curriculum. This is when SACS went through its transition from the old self-study module or model to the new assessment, student learning outcomes, and all of that. And then for the last year, I've been serving as, the last year and a half, as our college's Title IX coordinator. Some of you may understand what that means based upon how much Title IX has been an issue discussed on your own campuses. But this has provided me an opportunity to work more closely with people on campus that I've not really worked as closely with in the past. And primarily the senior administration. I report directly to our Senior Vice President for Administration and Finance as the Title IX coordinator, as well as work more closely with our Vice President for Student Life and a few other people. So again, this is outside the mainstream library liaisoning that we're all most familiar with. But what I have found is the more you get to know people on campus on a personal level, the more likely you are to get your asks, or at the very least a serious ear for your ask. So what I have found through all these experiences is even when I've not been acting in a capacity as the director of the library, whenever I've needed to address library issues, particularly library needs, even more particularly funding needs, there have been benefits to me acting in these other capacities. I think it just has given me a level of, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but it's just given me a level of, yes, clout, thank you, Paige, with other people on campus in decision-making positions outside the library. So I think when you're looking at stepping outside your defined position at your library, regardless of what that position is, there can be political benefits to the library and ultimately to the users of your library, since that's what we're all here for. So I'm out of my time, and I apologize for this maybe seeming a little rambling, but I'm trying to keep my voice here. Does anybody have any particular questions?
Well, hi, this is Tim Dodge. Hi, Erica. I would think the Title IX coordinator position is quite challenging. I'd say this as someone who served on the student discipline committee here at Auburn, and unfortunately we had to deal with a sexual assault case. I won't go into the details now, but it's, some very unpleasant and dangerous stuff sometimes comes up. Have you had any things of that nature to deal with? You don't need to be specific, of course.
Well, of course. Yes. My responsibilities cover everything from making sure that we have a policy on campus that's in compliance with Title IX and that our processes, excuse me, are in compliance. But we're also, as are all institutions, mandated by the U.S. Department of Education to have an education and training campaign. So we're obligated to provide training to faculty and staff, provide educational programming to our students. And of course, if we have a case that comes forth, then I'm the one responsible for overseeing the process of addressing the complaint, stopping any harassment or discrimination that is going on, and then determining if, working with, I have a committee I work with, and if we have an official investigation, then we have an investigator who conducts that, who provides me with a report. Then I bring the report to the committee, we discuss it, we determine a finding, and if there's a finding of responsibility on the part of a party, then we determine the appropriate sanctions. So yes, it can be a full-time job in itself if you have a current case. So the biggest challenge I've had is balancing that responsibility with my regular job as the library director. There are some days I spend more time on Title IX than I do library issues, and then there are some times where it's the other way around. But most colleges and universities are currently handling their Title IX obligations by essentially having volunteers do this. Very few institutions have created full-time Title IX coordinator positions, and I dare say that's because of funding. So it's something that most institutions are still feeling their way with. But I will say with Title IX, people may think, well, does this have any relevance to libraries? And it actually does. Some pretty direct because the people that work in the library are considered under Title IX responsible employees, and there's some responsibilities that come with that. But also because we tend to be one of the biggest employers of student workers on campuses, there are some aspects of Title IX related directly to that. And when you have, as a responsible employee working in the library, when you have to report something you've heard and when you don't have to report it. As a matter of fact, I had a program proposal on this topic for ALA through AACRL, but it didn't get accepted. So, and one of the reasons was it was deemed only moderately relevant to libraries, according to the feedback I received, which was disappointing. But there are some pretty significant impacts on the library related to this.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks, Eric. I hope your voice starts feeling better. Is your throat sore, or is it just laryngitis?
Well, I had a very bad cold, and Monday night I had to do a 2-hour presentation to 2 different classes. So that pretty much did my voice in, but it's better today than it was yesterday. So,
well, we appreciate you speaking to us today with in the midst of recovery.
Well, you're very welcome.
Thank you. All right, Cynthia, are you ready?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So, hi everybody. I am the Music, Performing, and Fine Arts Librarian at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. And you can go ahead to the next slide.
Okay.
And so in this position, I have a liaison role with these schools and departments. I would say the largest component of this is the School of Music. It's grown a great deal since I've been here. It's now, I believe, around 500 students, graduate and undergraduate, with 50-plus faculty. So it's a very big school with many, many different areas of concentration and majors. So it's a big challenge. I'm also liaison to Department of Theater and Dance, and that's a big component of my job also that has grown. There's a big musical theater program now in the theater department, and the dance department has also grown, and I do a lot of classes for them. Department of Art I just recently took on with the retirement of one of my colleagues. And this is a very fun area. I'm mainly doing collections for them, but I've also taught some classes, and it's a very interesting group. They're quite dynamic. American Studies. Now, American Studies New College and Honors College have their own liaisons, but I liaise with them in the case of music subjects. So you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
So I just made a little outline of some important liaison duties, things that I do, and I would imagine most liaisons do. I've been so interested in what people have had to say about collections, and I think Michael mentioned collections. Are we doing collections or are we doing service? And I think that in a sense they really feed one another. At least that's what I have found in my work. So anyway, here are some important functions, and so what I'm going to do is just talk about how I fulfill those functions, especially in these areas that require some specialized skills like music. So you can go to the next slide. So, and I'm going to sort of focus on music because there are some special requirements. When you're a music librarian, you deal with lots of musical scores, and your patrons are they're checking out books, but they're also checking out scores very frequently. And so it's important to be able to read music. And in fact, I get reference questions quite often where I essentially need to be able to read music in order to answer those questions, such as songs that are perhaps transposed to different keys for different voice types. I've had situations where I've had to actually identify pieces. So that's a very important skill that you need as a music liaison and collections and reference person. Music repertoire, of course, is vast. Here, the curriculum is focused in the School of Music. The largest, I would say, focus is on Western classical music, but they are starting to do a lot of other things too, and so you need to know lots of repertoire, and of course music history, both classical and popular, and I find popular music history especially important for departments like American Studies, where they're very interested in that. Also jazz. You can go to the next slide. So keeping up with the curriculum, that's I think one of the important elements that everyone here has sort of touched on. And some of the ways I do it is, whenever I'm going to teach a class, I ask to see the syllabus, and usually actually the professor has sent it to me already, but if I don't receive it, I ask to receive it. And also, of course, syllabi are very useful in making collection development decisions because you start to see the emphasis that faculty are giving to various areas in a topic. Now, new courses, of course, for instance, in the School of Music, they've always had a little bit of film music interest, but they have now really beefed up that course. So that's affected what I've done as far as collections, and I'm ordering more recordings of film music. And films also. Films where the score is an important element, which is many movies actually. And of course talking to faculty a lot about what it is they want to accomplish in courses, what they expect from students. I talk to faculty a lot about these things. Okay, next slide. So the other important thing to keep up with is new trends in research and performance. And to do this is a big challenge because there's a lot going on in theater, music, and also art. So here are some of the things I do to to keep up with this. Performances, like prizes I have here, prizes, for example, the Pulitzer Prize, who gets the Pulitzer Prize in music, who gets the Pulitzer Prize in, well, prizes of, you know, like Tony Awards and Obie Awards and all of that. Oh, plus the Grammys, the Graham-Meyer Award. All of those things are really important to keep up with because your patrons are very interested in these things. Also, concert series, I like to keep up with, like who's the composer in residence at New York Philharmonic or Los Angeles Philharmonic, so that I can get those scores of that composer into the library. And the interesting thing is that there are lots of composers now who were not necessarily on the radar because the whole field has become even, one might say, more international. This is true for everything, I think, but certainly in the arts, the whole scene is very international. So someone just won a big prize, and I can't remember his name right now, but he's a Danish composer. And so suddenly someone pops up, and this happens a lot, somebody pops up that maybe you just are not familiar with, you have never heard of them. But suddenly, you know, your patrons are going to want to see and hear that person's music. Okay, you can go to the next slide. I'm hearing some stuff in the background now. I don't know what that is. Anyway, keeping in touch with faculty is a big element. Some of the things I do, hello? I'm hearing a lot of people talking in the background. Could you turn off? Hello?
And I would ask her.
Hello.
Can you turn off your mic?
Can everybody else turn off their mics while Cynthia is talking?
Thanks. It just is distracting.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. So anyway, so making presentations, as we all do, about the library at faculty meetings, that's actually very helpful because a lot of times we've gotten in new databases or other services that we're offering. One of the things we offer here, which is a quasi-secret, is we have a courier service to the School of Music, which is about a half a mile from the main library, where the music library is. We're a separate unit in the main library. We're not in the School of Music, which is the case at many institutions that have large schools of music. The library is actually in the School of Music, and that's just one of the challenges of my position is a lot of people complain a lot about how far the library is from the School of Music, and we try to do everything we can to bridge that gap. I frequently teach in the School of Music. When I have classes, I frequently just go over there to do my classes, and they prefer, obviously, they prefer that when that's possible. The Department of Theater and Dance is much closer, so it's much better for the students. They're always here in the library, which is very gratifying. I also work with sometimes the department itself has a liaison, library liaison. I work with them. I also serve on the School of Music Library Committee. And of course, I send emails. Out to the faculty about what we have, and usually what I do is every month we send out a list of new publications that the library has received, scores, books, recordings in music, and I'm doing that also now with theater and dance, and people really appreciate that. And we also have a new, this is not new, but we display new scores and new books in the library on a special shelf near the circulation desk for 2 months, and that's also a gratifying thing. I love to see people browsing the new bookshelf and checking things out right away. I feel like I've done the right thing there. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So keeping in touch with students is also a big, I think, plus. I go to quite a few department events at the School of Music. I go to, recently I was at several lectures given by scholars from the Beethoven House in Bonn, Germany, where they published the Beethoven edition. And you get a lot of insight into how scholars are editing now, editing complete works of composers, and all of that. And all of that is very important, really, for my work. And then also, I'm in touch with the faculty there at that time and the students. Students love it when you go to their, concerts, or when you attend theatrical performance or dance performance. I also have, in a sense, because I have a little circulation desk here in the Music Library, circulation and reference desk, so it's staffed mainly by music students and theater students, and their friends come to the library and are, talking with each other, and it's almost like they're your sub-liaisons in a way. And I like to chat with my students about what their interests are. And so one of my students, for example, is very interested in video games, and so I've gotten in music for video games. And this is all, kind of keeps me current with what the students are interested in. You can go to the next slide. So, of course, I do lots of instruction. I create subject and research guides on many topics. With the faculty in the School of Music, with the music history faculty, I have developed what we're sort of calling a library curriculum, which consists of both written assignments and presentations by me, which are incorporated into the class, into the syllabus, and I have developed this so that the students in these classes will be prepared as far as possible to use the library resources to write their papers, to make their own presentations, and so on. And still sort of this is relatively recent, so I'm still sort of evaluating how all of this will impact their work. The other thing, I invite studio classes in various instruments to visit the music library. So, for instance, the violin studio will come here, and I will put out some of our new violin scores. I will give them a tour of the library where they will see where the call number ranges, where they can find the music they're looking for. Usually they're technique books of various kinds that they may or may not be familiar with. Often I find the faculty member, the instructor, is not as familiar with these things as I would expect, and so I'm actually able to suddenly make
Cynthia, I think we've lost your sound.
Sorry, I don't know where I left, where I must have pressed it by mistake.
I think you were talking about faculty not being aware as you expected them to be.
Oh yes, right. Yes, so really just a few things. Yes, just they're not necessarily always aware of what we have here and how this can help their students. Because a lot of faculty in the School of Music have, in their offices, they have files with music, and they give a copy to the student, and the student learns the music. But this faculty member may not always realize, oh, this is just published, and my students can really use this, and I send them over to the library to get it. So that's very helpful. So we have fairly good, working on a solid score, a solid collection of scores and parts, and so on. Of course, library sessions I do, as I mentioned, I've created these self-guided written assignments where they either online or in the actual physical library they look up things and they find things, they answer questions, and hopefully that helps them. And I am always available for reference assistance, and I find that the students are especially interested once I've actually, contacted them, made presentations to their classes, and so on. Okay. So I think we can go to the next slide. So accreditation reports, I don't know how many of you have actually done these, but they're interesting because when you do them, you get a kind of overview of the collection and what's in the collection and what is of special interest to the particular accreditors who are coming around. So I've done about 5 of these accreditation reports for both the School of Music and Department of Theater and Dance. So I work with the acquisition staff and compile expenditures that are put into the accreditation document, and then I write a summary of our library holdings in that area, and with some emphasis on the new things that we have acquired, and of course a lot of the electronic things we've acquired are of particular interest. And then when the accreditation committee comes to campus, I meet with them, give them tours as needed. The dance accreditation people were very, very interested in all aspects, and we went up to and looked at the dance section, and we looked at our electronic streaming video, and we looked at our videos we have here in the library, and it was a very interesting. That was, I think, the most recent one I did. So those become an important part, in a sense, of uniting the library with the academic departments. And I actually think that, I've been very interested in hearing what everyone had to say, because I think the more we are part of the overall university and the departments, the better. And I feel that as a music librarian, I have kind of been able to do that because as a musician, I always was using the library and was tremendously involved with browsing, and I still do that in particular areas. And that's how you kind of sort of unite your discipline with the library. And just a couple additional liaison activities that I have conducted, creating library exhibits. So if there's let's say, as there was a few years ago, a composer's birthday like John Cage, and they're doing, so I coordinated the library exhibit with what was going on in the School of Music, and that was a very nice thing. I've also, in the past, held a couple concerts in the library where faculty and students from the School of Music and Department of Theater and Dance have participated and performed, and we've had lots of attendees from the university and the community, and it's kind of your presence, the library's presence in the community is kind of brought to the fore with events like this. There are lots of work to do, so one may not have time to do them. In fact, things have become, in a sense, busier, and so it's hard to do these extra activities that require a lot of effort. But when possible, it is fun to do.
All right.
So that's it, and thank you very much.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Cynthia or any comments? Cynthia, do you have any comments about anybody else's before we move on to Cayce?
Not at the moment, I don't think.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Last but not least, we are going to move to Cayce Van Horn, Business and Economics Librarian at Auburn University.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
It's Cayce.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I think you can all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So, yes, as you said, I'm Cayce, and I'm the Business and Economics Liaison at Auburn University. I work with Tim Dodge, who spoke earlier. And I'm just going to talk to you today from the perspective of a brand new subject specialist that is currently learning how to make this transition into liaison work. So you can go on to the next slide. So just to give you a little bit of background about me, I'm going to share a little bit about myself and the way I've made this transition, and am still making this transition right now. And here I am just to put a face with a name, since we're all online here and we can't actually see each other. And just to let you know a little bit about where I'm coming from and how new this is to me. So in addition to working as a librarian at Auburn, I'm also a part-time English instructor for Columbus State over in Georgia, and I've been an English instructor for 7 years now. I've been working as a librarian in various roles in different colleges for 3 years, and until about 5 months ago, all of my library work has centered on instruction. And then this summer, I started to transition from these instruction-centered duties to some liaison and subject specialist work with the College of Business and the Department of Economics, which are two separate academic units here at Auburn University. So we can move to the next slide. And as a result of this change, my focus shifted away from solely information literacy to a combination of many duties, which I have very generally categorized here as collection development, specialized instruction centered on my subject area, and faculty and student support for those in the fields of business and economics. And so at our library, the subject specialists act somewhat as facilitators between the faculty and students in our departments and our library's technical services team, who procures and manages our resources. And so with the help of our collection development team, which is actually made up of 3 reference librarians who are also subject liaisons themselves, the liaisons are responsible for purchasing relevant books and journal subscriptions for our faculty and students and working within the budgets that are set for our specific areas. And so we act as selectors of resources and also determining which databases are most crucial for our researchers in our areas. I can go on to the next slide. So a little bit about how I'm learning to do all of these things. I've had a little bit of a luxury of being able to ease into this role a little bit, because the previous business and economics liaison didn't leave the library completely, but she transitioned over to the instruction team. And so she has been able to serve as a peer mentor to me and shared her best practices and guidelines for faculty support and student assistance, subject-specific instruction, and more. And so together we've been able to develop a plan that has helped me connect with faculty and students in the subject area of business and economics, and to build effectual and productive relationships with them, and then continue to develop those relationships along with my own skills and knowledge in this new role. We can move on to the next slide. And so connecting with faculty was my first step in kind of delving into this liaison work. And so we started by reaching out to the Associate Dean of the College of Business, who was already known to be supportive of the library, which was actually wonderful because it led to a lot more opportunities. Meeting him led to an invitation for me to attend an executive meeting, a leadership meeting of sorts for the College of Business, where I got to work with, I got to meet the heads of all of the different departments within the College of Business, such as accounting and supply chain and management. And then those introductions kind of spiraled from there, opened up to opportunities for me to attend faculty meetings in each of those departments, where I was introduced to the teaching faculty. And so out of that, I was able to schedule individual meetings with department heads and talk to them about the research that goes on in their departments and how they feel about the library and how the library can best assist those faculty and the students in each of the departments. And those meetings, along with some very diligent follow-up emails on my part, led to more teaching opportunities as well as opportunities to answer questions for individual faculty members. And while attending those kinds of introductory meetings, I was at the same time sending emails to faculty members who we had already known had requested information literacy instruction in the past. So kind of keeping up those same contacts, introducing myself as someone who could now provide that type of service. And we can go on to the next slide now. And again, at the same time, part of making these connections, it also found it helpful to reach out to new faculty and graduate students on an individual level by sending welcome emails and inviting questions and offering assistance, mainly just introducing library services and resources to them on a very general level, offering information literacy instruction, or offering individual research assistance. Out of these types of emails came an opportunity to set meetings with the new faculty members and welcome them personally and explain all of the resources and services that we do have and all of the things that I could offer them to help and offer my instruction services to them. And then with the graduate students, by sending them emails and just a very basic introduction, they have felt more comfortable responding to me, and I've gotten to assist them with some very detailed research inquiries that they have. We can move on to the next slide. And so after making these initial connections and introductions, I've worked on harboring and building these relationships by teaching for the faculty members that I've met, by purchasing relevant materials and requesting materials that they have specifically asked for, openly communicating price changes. Tim talked a little bit about this, and I also, like Tim said, I don't sugarcoat it. As soon as it happens, I put it right out there, and I am prepared with journal usage statistics and ready to discuss what we can cut to make room, or discuss do we really need to keep this journal that went up a large amount, and those types of things, and just tracking and discussing the usage data, and also keeping them up to date on library news and events by sending newsletters. A couple of other subject specialists mentioned that as well, letting them know about any types of deadlines or changes that are happening here in the library, and letting them know about the new things we've gotten or anything that we've lost, things that have converted from print to online access only, and all that type of information. And of course, always assisting them with any research questions that they have. We can move to the next slide. And so another part of this, at the same time I'm making these connections and building these relationships, as someone who's brand new to this subject area, I've been working hard to develop my own knowledge by perusing the College of Business website in detail and the Department of Economics website in detail. Luckily, that's a great place where I can find faculty bios and information on their research interests, which really helps me get an idea when I'm trying to order books. I can also learn to pick things out myself that I think will be useful for them. That way I don't have to rely only on their requests, and I can go ahead and select things that would be helpful to everyone in the different departments. And also just boosting my subject knowledge by reading introductory texts and tutorials and things. I'm listening to webcasts that are out there, and just even basic introductory information on business administration. It's all new to me, so just getting into the role, trying to learn things that the students are learning and be able to make connections better with them. Also, joining listservs. I keep an eye on their calendar of events, things that are happening in the departments, and I go to them and I make sure that I'm there with a stack of business cards so that if I have the opportunity, I can offer assistance and offer help. And so in that way, while I'm developing my own knowledge and learning more about the College of Business and the Department of Economics, I'm also still networking, still making those connections and letting them know that I'm there and can offer help to them as well. And can move on to the next. And just further to go along with developing my knowledge, I've also worked on developing these skills, things that are new to me. I have taken the recent class, the Business Reference 101, was a huge help, so the classes have been great. I also took a collection development class offered through ALA, which was wonderful because collection development was new to me as well. And in addition to those things, just searching through, reviewing encyclopedias of different types of business resources, getting an idea of all the different things I can use and the ways that I can help the faculty and the students who have questions of me. Just taking time to practice with the databases and looking at those tutorials and keeping up with any changes and updates that are made. Something that's also been very helpful to me as a new person in this role has been examining the existing LibGuides that have been created by predecessors and starting to update those and learn what's out there and see things that have been used in the past, and then also adding new things that may be useful now. And as far as more learning new roles in collection development, I'm very lucky that we also have our collection development team that has been able to offer me some guidelines and assistance on that as well. So with all of that said, we can move to the next slide. Just want to spend a minute reflecting a little bit on the biggest challenges and the biggest rewards that I've noticed so far. And the biggest challenge to me, probably the number one thing that really sticks out to me is, especially as a brand new subject specialist, is teaching an unfamiliar subject. So I am an English major, a creative writer at heart, and business and economics are new to me. I find the information fascinating. Company research is really interesting to me, but it's still new. And so my biggest challenge has been, I feel sometimes as though I'm teaching myself just to prepare to teach them the information and literacy classes. And so that's been a big challenge to me. And also just balancing all the new duties, not able to focus only on instruction anymore. I'm trying to juggle all of the things that go along with being a liaison. And then, of course, there's collection development. Learning to right-size the collection and read out things that may not be useful anymore is hard when you're new and you may not know how you may use all of the resources that the library currently has. And also, of course, working with that limited budget and having to say no sometimes. It's really hard. I'm a people pleaser at heart, and I don't like to say no, but I just have to. And so I've tried to learn to say it as nicely and kindly as possible and explaining why that's the case, armed with numbers and budget amounts and statistics. And then the biggest reward for me, I really love reference transactions. I always have. It's why I decided to go to library school. So working closely with students and faculty on individual projects and having that one-on-one interaction with them, that in-depth research work and providing them information that they need and helping them has just been really rewarding to me and has been my favorite thing about this new role. And that is all that I have.
Okay, so at this time, we would like to open it up. Let's see, who raised their hand here? Yes, Michael.
I have a question for Casey.
Okay.
Okay, so appreciated hearing your comments as a new subject specialist. we have a few new subject specialists as well here at the University of Alabama. Could you talk a little bit about, if you would like, about what the head of collection development can do to help a new person such as yourself?
Absolutely. That is a great question, and I have been very lucky because we have a collection development team that's made up of 3 of the members of the reference department, and they really have this wonderful open door policy. They have been so helpful to me. Just anytime I have a question about things, I have bookmarks. They created this lovely, and you may have one as well, LibGuide, a collection development LibGuide where I can go to find all of the information I need. It has tips on using Gobi because that was new to me, learning how to order materials through a site like that. They also have where to go to find journal usage statistics and the things that I need to communicate with my faculty. So having guidelines like that already set out, and then having an open door policy so that if there are things that I can't find and things that I have specific questions about, I can go to their office and ask, and they're always willing to explain things to me or help me understand the way collection development works.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for our panelists? Yes, go ahead, Amia. You can ask your question. Amia, you can ask your question. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, hi. I can't hear anything right now, unfortunately.
Oh.
But okay. No, I haven't published it. I mean, it's not a top secret document, but I've only really shared it with the library administration.
I didn't catch the
Still
question.
can't hear anything.
Yeah, I think she just, Amia Baker typed in the chat box, Tim, did you publish your needs assessment survey? Amia, were you asking him if he's published the questions or if he's published the results? Okay. All right, so Tim, you haven't shared any part of your survey with anybody except your administration. Would you be willing to share your questions, your survey instrument, Tim?
Yes, certainly.
Okay. All right. So let me.
I could send as an email attachment or something if you're interested.
Okay. So let's get your email address. Can you type your email address down here in the chat box, Tim, and they can email you if they're interested in having that instrument shared? Okay. So Cynthia, what is your question?
Look, I was actually going to ask about the survey also, the assessment survey. I'm not really seeing anything in. Oh, wait a second. Oh, okay. Oh, here we go. Oh, okay. I see it now. Sorry. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about. Because it would be very nice. It would also be nice. I mean, we've just so many interesting points made here. It's too bad that we weren't recording this, actually.
We are recording it. It's going to be archived. I'm getting ready to put the link here of where it will be archived.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Because there have been some very interesting comments, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. All right, Beth.
Yeah, so I got a question for, I guess, Tim and Cayce? Yeah, that's right. So y'all's radical transparency with your faculty in collection development decisions. I love it, but I was just going to ask, have you seen any do you find that I know the faculty get upset about some radical transparency about, like, we can't afford this, but do you see that it maybe is forcing your faculty to advocate on the library's behalf at all? Are you seeing some upshot from this radical transparency?
Oh, I think Tim is having a hard time hearing.
I just solved the problem. Turns out my knee had kicked off, one of the cables. So, okay, now, so I'm sorry. What's the question? Okay.
So I was just asking. So I was just saying, like, y'all's radical transparency with your faculty in collection development decisions is really interesting, and I like the idea of radical transparency. I was just wondering, like, I know you probably get some immediate negative feedback from faculty, but have you seen that this is kind of forcing your faculty to advocate on the library's behalf to the university administration at all?
Not so much, although I do know that the history faculty, when they were quite agitated, they said, hey, we need to go to the provost about this. And of course, the irony is that some of this problem ultimately arises out of the provost's office, distribution or lack of distribution of funds.
Right.
So I haven't otherwise, no.
Well, I mean, I think we're kind of, I guess, shooting around the idea that, like, maybe we need to, like, maybe that will instigate upheaval, but maybe not. We're kind of thinking, how transparent do we really want to be?
Right. Oh yeah, I mean, I don't bore them with tons of details because, I know their time is limited, but
right.
I do try to keep them informed whenever things of that nature do show up. Yeah.
Yes, William. Okay, to Beth. Your liaison role from an ad hoc to a strategic teaching. Is this more of an embedded librarian transition where you see a specific professor's section of classes multiple times during the course of a semester?
Yes and no. So what we kind of, this is going to force a little bit of background, so sorry, but we have a foundational information literacy program with our English 102, our second comp, and it is clearly established. So we really wanted to grow our discipline-specific, so upper-level students in the majors, library instruction courses. We've targeted, after doing our curriculum map, we've targeted either our methods courses within the major, which often are W courses or writing intensive courses, writing across the curriculum, writing in the disciplines, whatever you guys call them, courses. So sometimes it means doing a one-shot session in a methods course in anthropology, but it also may mean multiple times depending upon the teaching faculty. So, like, I've done highly embedded this semester and also one-shots with consultations in my office. So it really depends on the disciplines, because we have some varying disciplines even within humanities. So does that answer your question?
Okay. He says yes.
Thanks.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, one more question. Yes, go ahead. You're welcome to ask your question. Okay. If that is all of the questions, then we are going to go ahead and wrap things up. Jessica has just shared the link for the Alabama ACRL membership page. Application. Currently, you have to print off a form and send us a check in the mail, although we are hoping to migrate to an electronic process very soon. I have also shared the link to the Alabama ACRL's YouTube channel, which is where we will be archiving this presentation as soon as we are able to pull it off of Blackboard Collaborate. So I would look for that by Monday. It's not going to be immediate. It takes a minute for the MP4 to process. So thank you to all of our panelists for taking your time to share all of this amazing information with us, and for all of our participants for joining us. And Jessica, do you have anything else to say? Oh, I think Jessica's lost her audio connection. She's still having trouble with her headset. So she says thank you, panelists, also. So I think that wraps it up. Thank you all very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for putting it together.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, thank you.